Prepping this video made me realize I've been out of school for 10 years. Also, on that note, happy 8-year anniversary to this YouTube channel. Shout out to my YouTube peeps of the world. Howdy. But yeah, 10 years out of school. Woof. Today we're talking about my biggest fear since art school, confronting it, what that means, what that looks like. I started my program in 2010 and it took a little while, but then the panic of being in an art program started to set in a little more, and we had these visiting art lecture classes. I was always so tempted to ask about the financial end of these visiting artists' lives, how they were making these really interesting, conceptual, beautiful works pay for their meals. 10 years since graduated, I've started to put the pieces together a little bit more. And honestly, I think some of the unanswerability of that big question for me as a youngster, and still to this day, is the discomfort about the answer. But I've been progressively confronting my fears about my actual sustainability as an artist, and the reason that's come up so much is because I graduated school with the mindset of doing whatever work I needed to do in order to kind of build up my safety net and establish myself. I was fresh and green. But now I have a little more experience under my belt and I can be a little more picky. I do have a decade of post-grad experience behind me now. I've explained this before, but YouTube was how I saw the foreseeable way to pay my bills. It essentially became my 9-to-5 to support me being an artist. I could be an artist on YouTube. And with that came different financial opportunities, a lot of which are commercial, whether that's ad revenue or sponsorships, working with other companies. When I went to school, I was really studying fine art. The reason those artist lecturers would come visit us was meant to be less about the pragmatic parts of what you do in your working life as an artist. It was about the celebratory creative parts, the things that got those artists really jazzed. And I'd like to interact with that joy, that artist's joy, more and more as I continue my path as an artist. Starting in 2019, I realized I was building up the YouTube side of my career, but I started to feel more disconnected from my time in school when they did encourage us to focus so much on the philosophical, the whimsy elements of art. It's been a gradual process since then, but I've been trying to deconstruct my relationship with social media and fine arts, and again, ask the question I did when I was a student, when I was in the artist lecture series, or when I added art ed to my degree for graduation. How do I make my pretty things pay for my bread? How do I get bread for my bread? It's another era of adaptation. It's led me back to my roots, things I used to do before I had moved so heavily online. It's put me in my studio a lot more. I'm really focused on, if I want to be a fine artist, if I want my majority income to come from my artwork, what does it take? What do I want to be making to be worthy of investment and reach clients that would resonate with what I can do? I feel like this freedom to be exploring deeper into my paintings because I'm doing more series and bodies of work. So I had a solo show. I've showed it off in some videos recently. The process ended up being like a 4-month exhibit ending with a closing show. Before we did this closing event in a 2-week period, I made new work to refill sold gaps, and I came up with a workshop, watercolor postcard painting. I love having a deadline and a purpose to create because it puts a fire underneath you. I was talking to the next artist who exhibited in the space, and she mentioned how you end up making stuff that you probably wouldn't have made without the urgency of filling a deadline and a quota. It left me with this body of work that I could look at and decide, is this what I expect of myself? Is this what I imagine I want to be doing or what I could be doing? When you're just thinking about creativity or art, you really can't actually conceptualize the translation of what you're capable of and what your work will look like, doing the physical labor of creating allows you to survey your skills, your interests, inventory, and then you can make decisions based on a physical representation of what you've done and what you want to come next, that portfolio. Making these leaps and investments of time and resources into making a larger body of work for my solo show, it made me realize I can afford to be a little bit more risk-taking instead of feeling like I need to always worry about my income in a very short-term turnaround. I can take time where I'm working on projects and then have kind of burst moments of income. I think that's part of adapting to being a craftsperson, is learning what it feels like and looks like and how it differs from traditional job structures. Part of being a business person or working for yourself is investments that you need to put in, and there's a certain amount of risk taking with that. I feel like I've been taking more creative risks and putting myself out there more in this ambition that I have to balance my in-person and online art journey. And the thing that's great about it is, for all the ups and downs, the expectations and realities of it all, I get to walk away with a real knowledge of what I can do at the end of the day. It's not this hypothetical or fantasy or escapism. It's a real tangible thing that I'm trying to do. And when I have successes, I can see them. And when I have failures, I can see them. And all of that is just kind of made more exciting by the fact that I've been planning and wanting and slowly shifting toward this pursuit for years, and now I'm getting to see myself over the last 4 months do 4 different events: the opening of my solo show, my first venue performance with my band, a workshop for the closing of that solo show, and then another workshop with a friend at her studio. At all these different times, I got to meet people I have formed connections with through YouTube or different online places, and I think I've needed it. I'm really grateful to anyone who's helped me to feel supported through this era. It's vulnerable. I definitely have stressed and panicked amidst all of these things. I mentioned the 4 things that I did. That's not to mention the things that I didn't do because I wasn't accepted. They weren't horribly devastating. The bigger emotions came from the things I was accepted to that it just made me nervous, or there was pressure, or I was afraid of failure going into them. But that confrontation of failure has been really good. I was reviewing an old video. There was just some notes in it that felt relevant again at this time in my life. Are you afraid of a creative risk because of how it challenges your identity? I think that has really played into why I do things and don't do things, why I have not fully attempted to be a full-time artist that makes most of my living off of my actual artwork versus wider projects that I'm doing. I love a variety of work, but my biggest fear has been that I am not good enough with my skills and my reach in order to support myself alone on the art that I make. I think that's ultimately my big goal. I like the idea of doing other things to keep community and variety and all of that good stuff, but a big fear has been that aspect. Am I good enough to make this work? Do I have the gumption? I've definitely taken a lot of creative risks on myself and invested time and effort and lifestyle for this. I feel like all the experiences of it has given me a greater sense of self, and because of that, I'm sinking in to some creative risks and allowing myself to really see what my identity is when I put myself out there, what I'm capable of when I try things that could or could not work out. The idea that we have to be exceptional to matter is a huge hindrance. Perfectionism is a problem when it gets in the way of you actually doing work, trying to put yourself out there, applying to that thing you'd like to be a part of. If we think that any amount of averageness is a standard of failure, and that's why we don't want to take creative risks, then we're robbing ourselves of opportunities to grow and excel and find out what we're capable of, who we might meet what good there is to come out of trying to show up. Not all negative things deserve our attention. It's something I really struggle with, but it is important that we give our attention to the things that really count, and it's important for us to make note of the things that we want, the things that maybe we're afraid to want but we would like to try for. The only way we're ever going to see ourselves get closer to the things that we want is by trying and giving our attention to those things, taking care of them, cultivating things that we want for our life. I listened to the 6 Feet Above podcast with Trevi Moran, and she said in a recent episode, in her sober experience, she's valuing times where she goes through little ups and downs because they're normal, and it's good to recognize that you can work through hard times, and that not all hard times are horrible or abnormal, and not all good times are blanketing and ecstatic. Normalizing problems, working through them to realize that's how you reap reward. All of these experiences come with putting yourself out there, and for me, confronting my fears, the social situations, what people think of me, my people pleasing, my desire to excel or succeed. If I let those things get in the way of me applying to things or hosting things or trying to show my work or sell my work or value my work, then that's when I'm really failing myself. Not by being average at what I do. That's not a failure. Anyways, this has kind of been a lot of me chit-chatting, but I'm gonna keep at it. This has been my life for the last few months, things that I've been hustling to do and change about how I'm applying myself creatively, showing up and trying to grow. And I hope, I hope you have a good day. Thanks for watching. Bye.